Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrew Townley. I'm the founder and Chief Executive of Archistry. And what I do is I help the Global 500 build effective, value-driven security programs. So what we're going to talk about today is the whole approach to AI security. AI is actually rewriting the rules of security, but the real problem isn't the technology. It's the trust trap that we've walked into. So what are we actually doing? Well, right now, we're turning AI loose in terms of hiring, our supply chain, and managing medical and clinical trials without really understanding what it is that we're dealing with. It's a bit like opening Pandora's box, because we have an intern that we would have hired to do certain things that AI is now doing before, and we have your dog, if you have a dog. If you don't have a dog, you know of dogs. But the truth is that either the intern or the dog is actually smarter than today's AI. And this is something we really get wrong, because what we think when we hear and we talk about AI is we think about C-3PO. It's polite, it's helpful, it knows stuff, fluent in many languages, but the reality is this isn't AI. This is AI. We give AI access to hiring, support, supply chains, clinical diagnostics. We treat it like a junior analyst, but it's actually more like a parrot with a calculator. What we're really trying to accomplish here is we want an outcome, and we want to have that outcome fast, we want it easy, and we want that outcome to be trusted. And in the past, the only way for us to get outcomes was to scale with people. Now we have the opportunity to do it with technology, but the reality is we're failing. So why is that? Well, the reality is that the trap isn't AI. It's what we believe about AI. We think it's smart, we think it's consistent, we think we can control it, but the system we are building with it doesn't behave the way we think. And that's really the problem, because we think that AI has a brain of some kind. It must, right? Because it thinks and therefore it is able to do things. But even though we think AI can think, it doesn't. This is actually what happens. AI is running inside some data center. You give it a prompt, and then it starts calculating probabilities based on what it's seen before, what the words are, and then it weighs those probabilities and it comes up with what it thinks is the next best word based on what I call magic math, because it's not actually doing anything other than picking numbers that match the most likely sequence based on what has come before. But that's not where it stops, because that only gives it the next word. After it gets the word, it takes that next word, and then based on what it's trying to do, it puts that word into a template, and then it generates the response. This is actually how the hallucinations happen, because it has a word, it doesn't have a word to complete the template, and then it makes something up because it actually has to follow the template, because that's how it's trained. So we think hallucinations are something that are actually mistakes, but it's not a mistake because it's just doing what it was told. It was told to fill out the template. All of this hides what the actual risk we're dealing with comes to be, because if we have an intern, the intern knows stuff. They know that if they have a problem, they have a sequence of decisions that they need to make. If it's one thing, they ask this person. If it's another thing, they can confirm it. And if they don't get the results that they expect, they escalate it. And they have something that nothing else has, which is judgment, because they can interpret in the moment what the next best action is. It's not just blindly following a process. But the main thing is the intern knows what they don't know. Now, if we compare that to AI, well, this is a session, typical session with AI. This happens to be Claude, and I asked it if it could summarize a recent article about AI, and it happily did it. But the problem is that the LLM doesn't know until you push it, because when I asked where that article came from, it admitted finally that, well, actually it didn't have an article and it just made it up. So unless you push back on the outputs that you get, and unless you validate what is actually coming out of your AI, then you're not going to be able to have any confidence that you're going to actually get what you want. The problem we have is that we treat this like a typical security problem. We think that if we've got the right dashboards, then we are in control until the lights go out. And then bad things happen. We've got headlines about Claude messing up running a store. We've got lying chatbots. We've got chatbots saying bad things about companies. We've got chatbots exposing credentials. We've got chatbots exposing PII. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is, after all of these things and after every reminder we've gotten over the last 25 years, we still believe that security is about controls. And that if we just have enough controls in place, then that means that we are governing whatever it is that we're trying to govern and secure. But the reality is that's not the case. The reality is security is governance, because most failures happen when the environment shifts, or in the case of the AI, when the model changes. In security, we think we're doing the right thing because that's what we've been told. We have our dashboards, we have our controls, and we think that if we prevent deviation by adding more controls, then we're going to get maturity and we're going to get security as a result of all those controls. But what are we actually doing? Well, we're actually not securing AI. We're just managing spreadsheets of anxiety. And the result is that we think we're doing one thing, but we're not being proactive. We're still reacting. And the strategy that we're trying to protect is already dead because we didn't proactively actually do what we needed to do to protect it. Because the problem is, and especially in the case of AI, it's the risks we don't see. Because we aren't accounting for the nature of the interactions between ourselves and AI, because it's more like a negotiation. And this is a picture of a governance relationship that enables a negotiated agreement between two parties. What it takes to actually achieve an agreement between two parties is there's got to be some agreement of shared beliefs and assumptions. There's got to be some agreement about the mutual benefits of the objective. And then all of that has to take place in an environment that facilitates and encourages flow, which is the delivery of that agreement over time. The thing is, this is not possible without those shared beliefs and assumptions. That's vision. And as the late, great world's fiercest negotiator Jim Camp always used to say, vision drives decision. It's how people make decisions. They believe whatever they believe, and based on those beliefs, they make those decisions. But with AI, it's a bit different because we have a lot of moving parts in the mix that aren't related to the normal interactions that we're dealing with. And it is a bit different, but what is the problem? Well, the problem is that we have first a set of assumptions and expectations about what AI can do. Based on those assumptions, we give it some information that it's supposed to act on. And then we have what we think is an agreement about what it is that it's supposed to do and how it's going to behave and respond. The problem is that there is no way to express this agreement with current LLM technology in a way that prevents what I call drift. And what drift is the erosion of what you've agreed with AI over time as it processes. And the reason it does that is because it uses its operating memory and the models that it's been trained with to constantly reinterpret its responses and your inputs, or in the case of agentic AI, the inputs that it gets from whatever it is that it's dealing with. Could be data, could be sensors, could be chat bot input sorts of things, whatever it is that it actually receives. And then that's not the worst part, because then the model can change, as it has recently. Like, I don't know if you are a heavy user of ChatGPT, and depending on how you use it, you may or may not notice these things. But in June, they made some sort of significant changes to the way that the model was weighted in terms of responses. And I don't know about you, but my experience with ChatGPT changed completely. And that was not anything under my control, but yet it doesn't say that it's doing things differently. It's not alerting you proactively to say, hey, I'm going to behave differently than I did yesterday. And then we have the configuration changes behind the scenes about the model. So all of these things contribute to the environment in which we are using AI to achieve some purpose, whatever that is. And then based on all of these things together, what's going to happen? Well, either us or the AI is going to make some decisions about what it is that it's supposed to do next. This is the environment that we have to understand that we're dealing with AI. And most importantly, in this environment, we have to understand what we can and can't really control. So let's walk through this again. So we cannot control the internal architecture of the AI agents we're doing unless we're implementing them ourselves, which is very, very rare. We can't control when those configuration changes are made, because the AI is either provided by us as a service, or provided to us as a service by somebody else, or we have taken some package of AI and we've dropped it in our environment and we expect it to go through and work the way we have configured it to work, but we also expect it to be updated. And therefore, if the updates make changes to those configurations, how are we going to know? And then we can't necessarily control the model changes for the same reason. Externally, it's totally transparent. We have no idea unless we are able to pay attention and detect the behavior changes versus what we did before. But if the agent is autonomous and it's supposed to execute 5, 6, 2, 10, 20 steps before it comes back to us, we're not going to know until way too late that it's not actually behaving the way we expect it to be. And the last thing we can't control is the environment. We can't do anything other than influence the things around us. We can't control the environment the AI operates in. We can't control the net environment of the whole of us using the AI. And we need to accept these things. And we do that by actually changing the way that we think about what AI is, how we can use it, how we need to manage it, what security from an AI perspective means, and how we govern it. Because we have control of our assumptions and our beliefs and our expectations about what AI can do. Based on that, we can control the information that we give it. So if we don't want information used to train the model or exposed in a downstream breach, then we need to be very clear before we give that information to AI what the possible implications are going to be if it is exposed. Because in fact, the nature of sharing any information with anybody is that that information is actually already breached. We just don't know when that's going to happen. So if we're not prepared for that information to be exposed to people we don't expect it to be exposed to, then we need to really ask ourselves, should we be sharing this in the first place? Because those are the decisions we need to make. And we can control the expectations and the agreements about what's going to happen. We can watch for drift. We can monitor the responses. We can periodically check and assure that the responses are still aligned with what we said, rather than what the AI happens to reinterpret our objectives to be after 3 or 4 iterations or executions or prompts. And then finally, we have the choice about what we do with the information that we get out of AI, whether that's, again, from an interactive point of view or from an autonomous point of view. So ultimately, what that means is that the only thing we can really control in this entire set of AI or anything really is ourselves. That is the fundamental assumption that we are consistently getting wrong in security. We believe that we can control everything else that we can't actually control, when we should be spending that time and effort controlling ourselves and the way we interact with the things around us. Because the real lesson here is we can't actually secure the model beyond the normal things we already know how to do with the tools and technologies we have. It is a piece of software. It is infrastructure. We already know how to do that. We have the tools and technologies to do that. But the problem is that AI is actually more than that, because we're asking it to do more. We are treating it like it is intelligent. We are giving it tasks that would have otherwise been given to other people in the past, and we're expecting it to sort of behave the same way because of the way it's interacting and responding to us. But we can't predict its future behavior. The only thing we can do is govern how we use it, what we expect from it, and what we do when it fails. Because this is ultimately what we're managing. We're managing a web of governance relationships, what I call a governance mesh, with everything around us, both internally with ourselves, our assumptions, our beliefs, the things that we do, see, the way we respond to the world. And ultimately, this is life. And life is actually governance. Governance drives everything. We think we have a security problem. We think we have an AI problem. We think we have an X problem. Well, it's actually a governance problem because it's based on the way that we are interacting and relating to that thing. And if it goes wrong, then it is about trust. The problem is most people don't even really understand what trust is. Trust is actually based on just 3 things. Answer these questions and you can finally understand what trust is. The first question is, well, what do we assume and expect? The second question is, well, what can we actually verify? And the third question is, what is it that we're actually governing? Why is trust in this thing or this person or this organization or whatever it is? Why is that necessary? What is it helping us achieve? Because that's actually what matters. What we are really governing is what we often lose sight of. And trust is really just a feeling about how likely we are to have our expectations met based on how we answer these 3 questions. If we have a good chance to verify things, we have legitimate expectations of higher levels of trust because we have more chances to get our expectations met. But if we don't have a way to verify, then, well, we don't actually have anything to stand on. So the old saying is trust then verify, but in fact, it's actually verify and then trust. In security and in technology, we've conflated trust with convenience. We've tried to outsource it to machines. We think that if we manage machine identities, then we're going to actually have trust and that things are going to work. And again, our expectations are going to be met. But trust without visibility is just faith, and that's not security. So when it comes to AI, what we really need to think about is we need to not try and secure the intelligence. We just need to really secure the relationships, because securing AI actually comes down to securing the relationships, because it's those relationships that ultimately drive behavior, both the behavior of the LLM or the AI agent and our own behavior in terms of what happens in response to it. The only way we can really do this is to start governing what we can actually control. And ultimately, that's the real future of AI security, because otherwise, you might as well put your dog in charge of everything. It's still smarter than AI. Well, there's many different ways that they can. It comes back down to whether you are able to detect them or not. Because ultimately, like I said, hallucinations they are wrong, quote unquote wrong from our perspective, because they are untrue or invalid. But to the AI, it doesn't know it's hallucinating. If you push it and it needs to validate or can validate what it said, then it can possibly detect what it is. But in terms of why they are bad from a security point of view, is that if you don't catch it, you're going to believe what the AI is telling you. Or in the agentic point of view, if it's running autonomously and it hallucinates, or it generates a hallucination in response to some step in whatever workflow it's supposed to be creating or managing or fulfilling, then actually it's then again, you're going to make the wrong decisions, or it's going to make the wrong decisions, and it won't know. So hallucinations are quite dangerous because they're sometimes hard to detect. And if you don't validate everything, which is why the verify then trust is there, then you're not going to know when it happens. But ultimately, the implications are that it's going to do the wrong thing, or it's going to lead you to do the wrong thing. And how long it takes you to check it may mean the difference between, 2 minutes of rework, or 2 days or 2 weeks of rework, or not even detecting that it's happened at all until much, much later. So what I mean by securing relationships is really about being clear that they exist first, because one of the biggest problems that we have, and definitely security has, is we tend to be really focused on the technology. We miss all of the other pieces around the technology, the larger systems of which the technology is a part. And ultimately, it's those relationships that are what we're trying to enable and protect. So these are the relationships, as I mentioned before, between ourselves and our objectives, how important they are, what the priority is, the people that need to be involved, both directly and when things go wrong, the relationships that we have as individuals and teams and organizational functions with the processes and the technology and everything we're doing, because those relationships are basically these negotiated agreements, and they are existing to enable some objective to be met. And it's our expectations that get us in trouble. So if we don't understand what those relationships are, and we don't understand what our expectations of those relationships are, or if we miss some that are important, when things break, because they will always break, we're going to be surprised. But if we want to secure the relationships, like I mentioned, then we understand what those relationships are. We surface them, we hold them up, and we can look at them and agree with those around us whether or not we've gotten everything that really matters. And even when it does break and we discover that we haven't, we add that to the list and we learn. And so if we are prepared for any of those relationships to be failing, or vetoed is what I call it, where they don't meet your expectations, we can do that in advance so that it's not a surprise, it's just normal. And we can architect and engineer our environments, our governance models, our processes, and our security controls in a way that's just okay. It's normal part of operations, and that's how we really become resilient, whether it's AI or anything else. But that's what I mean by securing those expectations and the relationships, because half the time we're dealing with maybe 5 to 10% because all we see is technology. And that 5 to 10% is important, but that's not what gets customers, that's not what gets revenue, that's not what keeps the lights on. And if we don't understand that, then there's no way to break the cycle of reactivity and actually be proactive in security. Well, if you actually resonated with my presentation, you're going to realize that it's not actually about the tools. It's about using the tools that we have in a different way than we've been taught. So, as I said before, I mean, you need to understand what AI is. And at the most fundamental level, if you strip it all back and you cut through all the hype and all the noise, it's just an application like anything else. It's provided as a service where you have little or no control, or it's provided by, basically it's an AI in a box, and you bring it in and you install it and you configure it. And then it's just another piece of your infrastructure. So you start with understanding the thing that you brought in your environment, and you've got information and data that you've got to manage, you've got technology components that you've got to manage, and we already have tools for that. We already have controls for that. The problem comes when we deploy AI in ways that we haven't actually thought through the implications because we didn't understand those relationships that I meant before. So like the rogue chatbot examples. We believe that AI is going to not drift, and it's going to continue to do the right thing, and that if we tell it what it's not supposed to do, that it's going to pay attention to us more than a human would, because it's a machine and machines are deterministic and that's all we need to do. But that's not true. So then we try and put new AI tools on top of the AI to do another layer of guardrails, and then they have the same problem that the other one did. And then so we think layers of prevention is really what defense in depth is about, and that's not really what defense in depth is about at all. It's about actually understanding what we're exposed to and then containing that failure. So the tools to protect AI, yeah, you can do red teaming, you can test it for prompt injection attacks, and you can do all those things. But you got to remember that when AI does the wrong thing, or it is able to be influenced or bypassed or breaks its guardrails through prompt injection, it's actually doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just not what we expected. So that's why it can't come down to tools. We have to manage our relationship and our expectations with AI as to what we're allowing it to do, because you wouldn't put a toddler on your frontline customer service, but your toddler is more intelligent and can probably respond better than the AI when somebody tries to mess with it. And that's the problem. That's what we don't understand. So it's not about tools. We have the tools, because at the end of the day, the technology part is still a technology part. Where we're thinking we don't have the tools is because we are treating AI like a technology problem, and it is not a technology problem. It is an active agent in our system that needs to be governed exactly the same way we govern people, but that's not what we're doing. Well, it comes back to the things that I've already said, really. You need to have a reliable way to look beyond the technology and discover the governance relationships that matter in getting any objective that you care about. So we have a false belief in security that if we just protect the tech, then that's all we have to do, because the rest of it just works itself out. So we don't actually try and figure out how it supports and enables the organization. We don't try and understand the jobs that technology is helping people do. And if we don't do that, then we're not actually protecting the outcomes, we're just protecting the things. And when we can't protect the things, then nobody is protecting the outcome. So security is actually better positioned than anybody else in the organization to actually shift focus from protecting the tech to protecting the outcomes. And you can't do that unless, like I said, you have a repeatable and reliable way to surface these governance relationships, validate them, that you're not making assumptions of your assumptions, and then understand what's going to happen when those fail. That's the only way we can get out of this trust trap, because otherwise we're either going to trust the AI or we're going to trust fancy controls that somebody told us is going to protect the AI, and then we're going to still be surprised when they fail, because we don't understand the expectations and we don't understand the governance model behind what it is that we're actually dealing with and trying to protect. Well, how does it get in there is the question. And there's really only two ways. It's either given to the LLM via some process that you have given it access to, or some data repository with the new integration APIs that they have that you've given it access to, or the people that you are trusting with that PII to do their job are now sharing that PII with the LLM because the LLM is either officially or unofficially helping them do their job. It comes back to what I said before. When you think about information, we think about information being breached when it goes outside of our organization. But if you think about like your own relationships, you tell somebody something, you can't control whether they're going to tell anybody else or inadvertently expose what you've told them by mistake. So the reality is, data loss prevention, you can scan it, but you might have some luck. The reality comes down to, again, understanding how that PII is actually used in your environment, and then understanding how the people with access to that PII or the systems with access to that PII are using AI. And you can only control what you give the AI. So you either try and block it, which will work to some degree, but again, our reliance on those things is overrated, or you understand the implications that you can't stop it from happening, and then you figure out what you're going to do about it because it happens. So you either change the AI that you're using to something that is compliant so that you have a different relationship with the AI provider, or you just block it. But again, blocking it is a false sense of security because there's always a way around controls, and controls will fail. And people are really, really clever and determined to do their jobs. And if this helps them do their job, they're going to use it. So you might as well plan for it and support it in a way that allows them to use it, rather than trying to prevent them and knowing that they're going to find a way around it anyway, and that it will happen, even with the best controls. So you can't actually stop it, full stop. You just need to plan for controlling it as well as you can by influencing the way that your people understand what they are doing. And you need to have a governance process in place that manages the interactions between where your PII is and any AI that it could go into. And that's really all. I mean, it would be great if there was an easy button answer or magic tool, but there isn't, because again, we've been led to believe that more controls are the answer. If we have a problem, there's an app for it, there's a control for it. And then that gets us off the hook of actually thinking about and solving the real problem we face, which is the governance stuff that we've been talking about so far. The reality is you can't, not today. So this comes back to my fundamental point of focusing on what you can and can't control. The AIs are a black box. Even when you see, like OpenAI introducing more breakdowns of what it's doing and how it's doing, you still don't know, because the responses that it gives vary every time they're generated based on that magic math. It's the probabilities and the weighting and which numbers and the sequence of tokens that it generates and which ones are more likely, and that changes. And it can also be intercepted and interpreted internally if you give it different directives. So there isn't really a way to manage that opacity. We have to accept it as part of reality, of the environment, of the use of this tool. So the question then becomes, okay, if that's the reality, then what can I control? Which comes back to enumerating those governance relationships and the assumptions and expectations, and a rethink of what we can and can't do, and then a renegotiation of the expectations of the mesh that we're in with everybody else, whether that's the executives or the delivery teams or the regulatory bodies or the lawmakers or whatever it is, because every one of those relationships is a negotiated agreement where all parties have the right to veto and attempt to change the nature of that relationship. So what are you going to do when you are given a requirement you can't meet? You go back and try and renegotiate the priority of that requirement. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. And based on what you come up with, you're going to need to make a decision. But we have to take ownership of those decisions. And that's one of the other things that we're not really very good at in security right now. We want to defer a lot of things to vendors or frameworks or other bodies out there to make decisions on our behalf. And that's what's getting us in trouble. So the only way to deal with your problem is to actually understand the reality you're facing and then decide and negotiate what is acceptable in the face of that reality, because it's not going to change. There is no way currently to absolutely deconstruct the decision process an LLM makes. Now, future AI may have a different deal altogether. There are ways to do it, but that's not the current technology. So for now, we've got to live with what we've got to deal with, and we have to accept that, and then we have to decide what we're going to do about it. Well, that actually depends on the way that you have configured it in part, and then it depends on how much that control actually works from their side. If you look, I have not used Gemini Premium because I've found Gemini doesn't actually help me very much. So it wasn't worth the experiment the way that I use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT the most. But so there is a setting that you can pick in both ChatGPT and Claude that says, don't use my information to train the model. And I have that checked, but I also have to trust that they're going to actually honor that checkbox. And I have no way of verifying it, back to our 3 questions about trust. So the only thing that I'm really doing in that situation is I'm governing the decisions that I make about the information that I share and whether or not I believe that that information that I share is not going to be used to train the model. Because at the end of the day, it's just a checkbox, and there's no way for us to verify whether that is true or not. But the important thing is that if you are using a model that allows this to be checked, then you should check that box. Because otherwise, any comment that you make is fair game to actually being assimilated by what I call the collective, which is the model's view of the world and what it uses to respond to things. So I'm a big fan of AI. If it didn't seem like that from the presentation, I use it every day quite extensively, and I pushed it harder than I think a lot of people have to do some really interesting things. But as I also said, since June, it's a lot harder to get it to do what I want, and I have no control over that. So if I don't have control over that, then I don't have control over when they may decide to not honor that checkbox either. So theoretically, yes, and I do, and I believe them, and I recommend that to everybody. But again, it's one of those decisions that we have to work through those 3 trust questions. And what is it that we're actually governing? We're governing the control of the information that we have. And we're making decisions based on my expectations, which are that the provider is going to honor the controls that they give me, and I've got to figure out what I can verify, and I have no way of verifying whether they've used any of my information or not. And that is why all these things ultimately come back down to a governance decision, because you need to make the decisions about what you can control, and you need to make those decisions informed by the implications of those decisions if your expectations are not met. That fundamental change alone changes security completely. Sure. I mean, if you have more questions or you want to connect or you think that I might be able to help you, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, we need to do things differently, because for the last 25 years, every assumption we have about what we can and can't control has been invalidated every single day since everybody connected to the internet. And we still haven't gotten the memo. And if we want to actually change the outcomes we get, we have to change those governance relationships. And one of the biggest and most powerful ones that we have at our disposal is what we believe and what we expect. And if we start there, we can change anything. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and yeah, let's have a conversation.